So tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris, and kind of your bio and stuff. I'm curious your story.
Sure. So I'll take you on my personal origin story and then tie that back in how I got into the industry. So when I was a young guy, I was like 7 years old with my parents, and we had this Cub Scout outing, and my whole family went to it. And I had four older brothers, so they weren't happy about going to it because I was the little guy. Long story short, we come up to the stop sign, and this cop's standing there, and he says, "Hey, you guys got to go around. It's February, it's cold, and we're all ready to get home." So he says there's a house fire. So we just creep along, and my dad's looking over his shoulder, and he goes, "Oh my God, it's us, it's our house." So, and I only use the story to bring some context. We go back. There's this big fire. Our whole house burned down. We lost a bunch of pets during it, and what that led me to, guys, was in that moment, I remember here's my big family watching everything they had kind of get, just destroyed. I watched and became this different person in that moment because my dad got right to work, and he became he just said, like, where am I going to take my family tonight? Right. I got to get my family a place to sleep. And my mom was just being nurturing. And as an 7 or 8 year old kid, what that did for me is it taught me this grit and grace that's led me to this place where I've been a coach my whole career. And that coaching is, currently with McAuliffe, I'm the sales manager, and everybody here calls me Coach Chris. I've been doing this for 30 years, working for, in the electrical industry, and I love to coach. So I've been working on my own kind of personal brand, doing some coaching, and then I coach all day, every day.
That's cool.
God,
Yeah.
so you have your own kind of company that you do coaching, and then you also work in college, is that right?
The coaching that I do a couple nights a week where I just take on people from all aspects of life. Most of those people come through the electrical sales channel because that's where I've lived for the better part of my career. But I became a certified life coach. An accredited business coach. I was a football coach, basketball coach. So I've been coaching this whole time. So I will, I got kind of this unique blend of experiences that I use in my coaching practice. But then, during the day, I'm sales coaching all day long, and really sales training, and just having a blast with it.
That's cool. And how big is McAuliffe? How many folks you got over there that you're like?
We're trending back towards 20. We usually sit around 20 people in the organization. We cover Michigan and Ohio for the agency, and then remotely we do cover some other geographies with our inside team. So, we've been around since 1975, so we're coming up on our 50th year anniversary. Great small company, couple of premier brands that have helped us, really build the reputation of the organization in the industry. So, we like to think we have a really good reputation, and I think we do. So.
And you focus mainly, I'm assuming, on sales coaching, right, for McAuliffe, and marketing and stuff, or is it sales?
You guys will get this. It's a small company, so we wear a lot of hats. So most of my job I spend as the coach, but I also still do customer facing. I do distributor training. I do customer training. We kind of pride ourselves as a technical agency. So, we're doing a lot of product demonstrations and things like that. And I've been in Detroit, you guys, for, the better part of my career. So I do a lot of automotive type of work here with specification in in the big three, the big domestic three and things like that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, we don't do a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's an industry that's interesting though to us. I don't know a lot about it. Is that significantly different than the electrical space or other spaces, the automotive?
So the automotive industry here in Detroit takes up the majority of our bandwidth. But, and recently with all the EV infrastructure and EV changes in the market, we've had a couple of really good years, right? So we're enjoying that. We're in a little bit of a lull right now as some of the other programs some programs are ramping down, and we have some more that are going to be ramping back up. But the rest of the agency, we get into all different verticals. We do oil and gas, food and beverage, a little bit of pharma, a little bit of furniture. We get into some different vertical spaces. But for me personally, being, headquartered out of Detroit here, we are pretty heavy automotive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys are calling on industrial accounts, and then you're kind of in the neighborhood where the auto industry is king. So a lot of those industrial accounts they are automotive, but you also get into some other ones, is what you're saying.
For sure. So, not only the automotive, themselves, but all of the suppliers, we're heavy into the panel shops. We play in a lot of that space, but we also go, we touch industrial contractors. We touch, commercial contractors. We get into a lot of different vertical spaces, but in this town, it feels like they got some sort of relationship to an automotive manufacturer.
That's right.
Automaker,
Yeah.
My dad worked for Ford for a long time, and we lived up near there. And he built like the big Ford Oval where they do all their testing. And I was young, but he took us on a to the track. One, this is a side note, but he took us to the track. Got this big van, like my family, a bunch of friends are in this van. He's like screaming down the road at like 200 miles an hour on this like embankment and doing all this crazy stuff. So
Kurt, you nailed it. We have, we have the testing facilities in the area, so the proving grounds, and we have plants all over the place, which we're very fortunate to have. And one of the interesting things that you guys might not know is that whenever anybody comes to and builds a plant in North America, a lot of the tooling often gets done in Detroit, so we get to benefit from that.
that's awesome. What do you? This is also maybe a side note, but what do you see happening with the EV market? It's a topic I think that's trending. We were talking about it to another guest I think last week. Is that what do you think is happening?
So I'm actually kind of starting to go into the market for a new vehicle. So as I'm talking to some of the car dealers, we're walking through a sea of electric vehicles that just haven't had the momentum from a sales perspective. So there's definitely been the push, the very hard push that was going down has slowed down a little bit. Everybody's still projecting that they're going to, the capital spend and the investment that they're doing in the automotive market's not going away, but they're slowing down the investment a little bit into the space. I think what we saw here in the northern climate, there was a lot of, talk that those batteries just didn't perform well when the climate got pretty cold.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So I think that scared some consumers. There's, the fact that we're just so ingrained in the ice engine that it's so easy and convenient. It's going to take some time to integrate, but it's not going anywhere. There's a ton of investment here. Just down the road here, we got Factory Zero for General Motors, the F-150 Lightning and Mustang plants not far from here as well. So there's significant spend there, and I don't think the automotives are going to take their foot off the gas. They just might ease up on the pedal a little bit.
Yeah.
Good. All right, so it's the wave is coming, huh? Tell us more about your coaching practice. For example, like what do you see as the biggest points when you're doing your coaching that have the biggest impact on people, or what do you tend to focus on?
Great question. So all coaching, it doesn't matter if you're doing sales coaching or life coaching or really it starts with some sort of limited belief that you adopted at some point in your evolution, right? And you come to believe something that may or may not be true. And really what coaching does and what I love about coaching guys is I'm not sitting there solving a problem. What we're doing is we're breaking down kind of where your ideology developed and why you think the way you think, and is that benefiting you and is that serving you to become the best version of yourself. So that's the fun part about guys. It is so satisfying when you sit through these breakthroughs with clients and they kind of see something from a different perspective, and you can just see them light up and spark and like, oh my gosh, that's really, and it really helps them improve on whatever they're pursuing of it, and like I said, I do probably the majority of sales coaching, and I love young sellers because they'll just have a belief of some sort that, and I'll say, well, why don't you frame it this way, and they look at it and they try it and then it works. Man, that's pretty powerful.
What's an example? We just had a guy on about a month ago that was talking about how hard it is as a new rep, right? In this industry, learning the ropes, all this kind of stuff. What are some of the things that you would help someone like that in terms of like their mindset, like you're saying?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, and especially in the rep business, is that I said it a little earlier, but we wear a lot of different hats and we serve a couple different masters, right? So, and we're often put in the position where we're trying to say yes to a couple of different sides of the equation. You'll see sometimes the frustration that comes in where, in our case, maybe our manufacturer has a certain set of rules that don't behoove us in the sales. And we do this dance. And sales to me is just a dance, guys. And sometimes it's a slow dance and sometimes it's a fast dance. So we're doing this kind of back and forth and the negotiation. And really what we're tasked to do is become this really good communicator, both directions, right? We got to be effective in communicating what a manufacturer's expectations are and also what our customer and our distributors' expectations are, and finding a bridge. So you're always solving problems, which ultimately, I guess that is what sales is always solving problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that. I agree with you 100%. It's when you're almost at times an arbitrator. You're trying to bring that true win-win to both sides. And sometimes that's difficult, but that's what we're charged with as a rep, bringing everybody to the table, making it happen, and where everybody walks away from that table feeling like they won. If we do that, then man, we've done our job.
Couldn't agree more. That is a perfect and accurate description of what we do. And I feel like, I get, as a salesperson, we get a pretty good fair amount of windshield time. And that's probably where I do the majority of my sales coaching, is just on phone calls and going through scenarios and how do you frame this, and and I did one this morning, right? I had a seller who was pretty frustrated with a factory response as far as in a competitive nature, and just trying to serve their customer, just trying to get orders, and I love that energy. But I kind of had to frame it back and say, okay, let's take a step back, let's find out where we can get maybe a small win and then build out on that, and then we can communicate that back and have a better dialogue about what the potential is here. And it's always nuanced, and you guys know this. It's just sales is just that dance that you're going back and forth, and a lot of people get frustrated and restricted in it, and I look at it as an opportunity to grow and get an order and have some fun.
Yeah, that's fair. What are maybe some of the patterns that you see, like in all these conversations you're having? Are there certain things that tend to come up more frequently that you're like, yep, this is how you do this, this is how you handle this is how you change it?
That's a great question. It ties in a couple of things that I see, actually, which is one of the funny things in the manufacturer's rep agency. We sometimes we have a hard time with numbers, and just because of the way that the market flows and the money flows, our numbers are a little slower, so we don't have real time data sometimes. What I see from both distributors and customers and my own sellers is that they don't set necessarily really strong targets or goals, and not because we don't want to, but because sometimes those are hard to get your hands around. So one of the things that I found really effective here recently is just saying, okay, let's pick a number. Let's pick, what is your sales goal? What is your target? Whatever that is. And I do this on coaching. It's just really, you set the goals early on in the coaching process. And then we just hold yourself accountable to those goals. And guys, I have gotten so much momentum with that approach, where people just start thinking differently. They start looking at, well, what are my options? Not what are my hurdles, but what's my options?
Do you typically coach like the sales folks or the managers of sales folks, or
a little bit of both? So I've had recently, the uptick's been in salespeople, but I've done sales management coaching, a little bit of leadership coaching. I'm working on actually a client right now who came to me and asked me to put together a leadership program. I hadn't done that before, so I have to put that together. And I'll say this about coaching, even to sales, life, leadership, it follows a pretty predictable path, which is, we're going to talk about those limited beliefs. We're going to set some goals, and then we're going to start working on a process, a very deliberate process that gets us to achieve those goals. And then I've just found that through my experience, I've applied it to a few different disciplines, and they all kind of follow a similar path.
You mentioned data when you were talking a little earlier. How do you see the availability of data and getting good data? How important is that to get everyone pointed in the right direction and working together to achieve those goals?
Yeah, I think that's the most important factor, because if you don't, for salespeople, if you don't have a sales target, then you're really just kind of floating out there. And believe it or not, there's a lot of companies that don't just start with a good sales target, and there's a lot of reasons, right? That's not being accusatory of anybody, but there's a lot of reasons they don't set sales goal. I think from a very basic coaching perspective, you just got to start with a goal. And in the sales industry, that's a sales target. And then you start to frame up the efforts and the actions that are going to go ahead and get you there and either meet or exceed that goal.
Gotcha.
Is there anything you see in terms of helping motivation? Like setting the goal is, I think, maybe 10%, and then like follow up. Right? What's your process for that?
Oh, you're so good. And that's it. And I think even in sales, you hit it with, what we can set a goal, and but the follow up, the thing you just kind of, that's the key. And it's a continuous process. I had a recent example. I tried to integrate myself to a new customer of mine, and it took me 12 reaches, touches, phone calls, emails, carrier pigeons before I got my first little email back that said, okay, by the way, more recently, that's turned into it's going to be probably a $2 million customer at the end of the day. But I think that sellers get so frustrated when they don't get immediate contact. But our attention spans are, I wrote the book about a short attention span. Our attentions, we got so many things coming at us every day, and you guys know it. We had text, even trying to, getting on the call with text messages, emails, direct messages, everything's flying at us, and we're competing for attention. So we got to be really skilled at how we get our customers' attention, and the best way to do that is just to provide an enormous amount of value in whatever you're approaching there. You just got to bring a ton of value, and the data is incredibly important, right? We need to have places we can measure. If you can't measure it, you you can't grow it, right? So
Well, you mentioned your book. So you got your book. Let me put it right
Yeah.
here so everybody can see it. Yeah. So I was on a long plane ride and I was going through this yesterday afternoon and kind of talk me through this. I mean, there's a lot of good content in here. And a lot of it kind of hit home for me from you talk about the short attention spans. I mean, we all have so many balls in the air every day. It seems like I'm like my dog. I see something like a little shiny and I go over here, and I go over here, and I go over, kind of talk us through this, the intensity method and how this came about, and give us the foundational parts and pieces of your book here.
so guys, I've been studying leadership, sales, human behavior for years and years and years. And so and a lot of that's book content, right? This really long form. And then most recently I got into audiobooks a few years ago, and those are 20-hour listens, right? While you're driving in the car. And so we had a NEMRA conference. So that's our National Electrical Manufacturers Representative Association. That's a long title. But we had our conference in Dallas and we got iced in one night. And I had been contemplating this book since I was with a seller years ago, and we had a 4-hour drive to one of our accounts. And at the end of that drive, he was new to the industry. He said, "Chris, you should write a book." So we got to the coffee shop in Alpena, Michigan, and I sat down and I started a Google Doc. And I'd been thinking these thoughts for years, right? And I'd had pieces of it in other places. So fast forward, I'm in Dallas, and I get solicited by somebody that says, "Hey, we can help you self-publish a book," and I bought and I wrote the book. And believe it or not, the book came together pretty fast. I mean, I wrote it probably 3-4 months, but by design it was meant to be short, Craig, because I don't, we're busy guys and our attention's challenged. So I wanted the chapters to be no more than 1 or 2 pages. I wanted to get right to the point, cut through the noise, and just kind of hit the principle really quickly and share a little personal story in there as well. So it was my first attempt at a book, and I'm not sure it was perfect, but I'll tell you what, I'm really proud of it and glad that I got it out to the world. So
Yeah, and I like that fact that, like you said, it's to the point. We can all get lost in these books. There's so many times I'm reading a book or I'm listening to a book and I start wandering, and I've got to come out. I got to play that again. I got to play it. I got to read that chapter again. This was it was direct. It held my attention. It was good. But kind of talk about, we got a few of just the topics here. This is like showing up. I mean, that's one of the things I talk about with all our people is 80% is just showing up. We talked about it on one of the earlier podcasts. Is like, look, you got to be in front of your customers. You got to be communicating with your manufacturers. It's showing up and figure it out. I mean, it's just kind of talk us through a few of these, like the showing up part.
yeah, the show up one was that seller I talked about when we were driving on that 4-hour drive. That was his biggest takeaway when we talked through like some of those stories and things. So that's why it became chapter one. It wasn't chapter one by writing. Actually, I wrote several of those chapters before, but I put chapter one, show up, because the essence of anything is just that. I just lost some weight. And the big thing was I start measuring my calories and going to the gym, right? I had to show up and I had to measure. And showing up to me in sales has always been it's the biggest advantage you can have is if you just are persistent and you show up. And sometimes, I had this young seller who just said, I'm a little lost. What I did is I just went to places and talked to people. And the guy came away with a day full or a couple days full of activities and things. Just even without a plan, he showed up. So that's the very first element you need to do to make some significant change in your life. And that's why I put that as the number one chapter and got the most feedback. That's the most popular chapter. So,
Well, too, I like that one. I tell you, the other one I like was pivot, and there's a quote here. Jeff Goins, pivoting isn't plan B; it's part of the process. There's so many times that we've all had, yeah, okay, this is our path, but you have to pivot, and it's not like we're scrapping the plan A and going to plan B. It's just plan changes, and there's a lot of other things going on that can cause that to change. You can't take that as a failure or, oh God, we just scrap everything. You just have to pivot. And I thought that was a great topic and a great point. And I love that quote that, pivoting isn't plan B, it's part of the process.
it is. And, I was a basketball coach. That's the first sport I coached was bat. So pivot was a term that I kept pretty close to my heart. So that came from that basketball experience. I just always liked it in that context, but we use it in sales and in life, frankly, all the time.
Yeah, there's so many external things that happen, especially in a sales world. When you're positioned between manufacturer and customer, there's a lot of pivoting you have to do to get where we all want to get. And like I said, get that win-win situation. And it's important that you don't take a square peg and just ram it in the round hole. You have to pivot and you have to maneuver with all these external things And once again, just keep your eye on the prize and finish the job. And that's part of it. Is pivoting is just, to me, is important in all that we do. And in this environment, with the way supply chains have been, all the other factors we're dealing with, labor issues at manufacturers, labor issues at customers, you have to pivot to make sure we get a successful scenario for everyone.
Yeah, critical skill. And I did try to, when I did the book, I did try to kind of front load it with the actionable things and then talk a little bit more about the human things at the backside of the book. But yeah, pivoting, figuring it out's another one that, that's a chapter there that, I think a lot of times when we have young sellers nowadays, they had a different experience with digital and other things, and they stopped short of accomplishing a goal and not just going all in and figuring something out on their own. And I know as a parent, as a coach, as a manager, I sometimes get frustrated with that, because that's another one that, us as kids, man, we got to go out and we figured things out, right? Because we didn't have a lot of convenience at our fingertips to go to right away. So that's one of the things I find myself coaching on quite a bit, is sometimes you just got to get in the grind, or go through the process and see how the whole thing plays out and how you develop. And I had a sales example yesterday that was, I took a couple of young sellers on a journey with me where I knew this was going to be a hard one. I knew it wasn't going to be smooth. And they have learned so much from that. In this case, by me setting the example, but the next time, those guys get to go do it and figure it out.
I mean, that's resilience, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about? How do you coach resilience in people? That's interesting.
I think most people are more resilient than we give them credit for. I think they want success. They want to do it the right way. They want to achieve. And in a lot of cases, we just need to give them not only the inspiration, but the accountability. And that's what coaching is in any aspect. Is I want to inspire you to be the best version of yourself, but I'm going to hold you accountable to the things you say you're going to do, right? So, guys, I have a coach. I keep coaches all the time. I believe in it. I believe in coaching immensely because of that, because I felt myself grow by doing those two things: staying inspired, though the world's going to throw some ugliness at you all the time, or sales or whatever, but you also got to be accountable to the things you set out to do. So those two things are really important to me.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned basketball coaching recently. What are the parallels you see between, we talk about this a lot, sports coaching, sales coaching?
So I'll take it to football, because I most recently did some high school football coaching, if you don't mind. Uh, all the coaching is the same. You get together with your team, your leaders. You come up with a plan. You do you watch film, or you go through and kind of do a competitive analysis. No different in sales. And then you say, okay, this is going to be our practice plan, our framework, how we're going to do it. And then you set your goals. And then you hold yourself accountable to those goals. And so coaching, the high school coaching experience was the best thing I ever did for my sales career. So it taught me as much about staying structured and yet having the ability to adapt on the fly, pivot. And so those two, they're very similar experiences.
That's good. You have some others in here that are interesting: kindness, enthusiasm. These are kind of inspiration, kind of character traits as opposed to maybe activities. Can you talk us through, maybe, is there a difference between how you would coach something like that versus?
Wow, it's a really good question. There's a deep impact that happens in coaching in a lot of cases, and there's a lot of emotion there, guys. And I'm, you can probably tell I'm a pretty emotional guy, but I'm telling you, when you connect, and this can be in sales, this can be in business, when you connect with somebody emotionally about those other things, that's the stuff that moves us. That's the stuff that drives me, at least. And I was raised by my dad was also a Ford Motor Company,
Mm.
but he worked his tail off, right? I had four older brothers. There's five of us, and he worked, and so I didn't get as much time with my dad as I would have loved to have. Though he was an outstanding, great dad, I really connected with my mom, and my mom was, she was. I think a lot of us say this, that we had the greatest moms in the world, right? But she taught me that softer side that honestly I think has helped my sales career more than anything, and that's how to be empathetic. That's how to have real conversations about real problems and solve real problems together if you can. And so that part of my coaching business, I sometimes get mad at myself because we'll be talking about sales and we end up in this deep conversation about something else. But man, that's impactful. And when you see those type of connections, you can't price them.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you talk about like the emotional side and the personal side, and I hate it when people say it's not personal, it's just business. No, they're one and the same. To me, to be good at what you do and to truly care and about everyone involved, it is personal, and you just can't divide the two. So to your point on all this, the emotional side of things, it becomes personal. And I think if you take it personal, then that provides that grind, that drive to make it work. And to me, it's just there's personal and business are just intertwined.
You so well said. I can't add much to it. I really agree with that. And that was when I was coaching this morning, that exact scenario came up, and you know, and how to sometimes it was a personal situation, right? This was a win that we want to do personally, and sometimes you add a little business into that to frame it up right. But man, it's all personal to me. I don't think I have an interaction in sales that isn't personal. So, and I like that part. And I tell you, I respect some people who can do, you know, have a little more balance than I do, but that's my style.
Before we move towards wrapping up here, I wanted to make sure we give you the opportunity to just any words you want to say, or how can people get in touch with you? How do you work with people? You know, if they're interested in coaching, for example.
So I'm all over social media. So if you want to find me, I live on LinkedIn mostly because that's where I found you guys, and I spend most of my time there from a professional standpoint. But that I do have a website, intensitymethod.com. It kind of frames out the different things I coach on. So you can easily get a hold of me there. I'm doing some business coaching right now, and they're teaching me how to do landing pages and other things in the marketing aspect of things. So maybe you'll see some of that develop. But right now, it's pretty much through the website. And of course, you know, if there's any manufacturers out there looking for a great rep in the Michigan, Ohio area, you can reach out to McAuliffe too. Cool.
There you
Yeah,
go.
right on. We'll do it. We'll set that up. Anything else, Craig, or any other
I
points
appreciate
you want to make?
appreciate the time. It was, like I said, it was a good read. I enjoyed it. It was definitely, for somebody with a short attention span, it was perfect. So I liked it a lot.
Right.
And
42 pages.
yeah, I mean,
42
Yes,
pages.
available on Amazon.
Yeah.
Available on
right
Amazon.
up my alley right there. But no, it was well done. I appreciate the time today. It's been a lot of good insights, and stay in touch. We'll have to have you back on.
Amen, guys. Anytime. I love this stuff, and I love what you guys are doing. I think this is really cool, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.